If you got young kids that are not old enough to ride a bike on their own, you're gonna wanna stick around because the Velotric Go fixes that problem. This is a lightweight step-through bike with a bunch of accessories to take all your kiddies on the trail with you. Take them for a ride. They don't have to stay home and be babysat now. That's my favorite feature about the Go is just what this bike has, what it offers. The first thing is just the traditional front rack. I do like the size of it. There's a wood plate at the very bottom, so nothing's gonna fall through. It's one of the bigger front racks I've seen for a bike. But then moving towards the back of the bike, that's where this thing starts to shine. Now, before you add any accessories on here, you do have a rear rack with the same wood plate as the front basket, so it does match and ties the bike together. But anyways, to make it more comfortable, you can buy this pad that just bolts on with 4 screws, and it's actually a pretty cushy and large pad. But the cool thing about this is instead of holding on to the person's waist like you typically do with 2-person bikes, this one has its own handlebars, easily mounts onto the frame, just 2 bolts, and that is actually very sturdy. But then moving down, you have a mesh screen on both sides of the tire. So if you have any loose clothing or if your kid's legs are dangling or whatever, they're not gonna get sucked in or hit the wheel. And then the last thing as far as accessories for the second rider is these foot pegs. They're actually pretty solid and nice feeling. They just screw onto the frame. When you're not using them, you can just fold them up, which is pretty cool. I had my wife take our youngest daughter for a ride. We went on about a 7-8 mile bike ride and she was loving it. So I thought that was pretty cool. I never seen this design on any bike before. Now you can fit up to 120 pounds on the rack. I actually got on here and had my wife take me around the block. It's a little bit scary because there's so much weight back here. And so when I was leaning, the bike would lean left, or when I was leaning right, it would go right. It's like a scary, fun sort of a deal. Now there's actually a lot of good stuff about this bike other than just all the accessories. Starting off with the grips, just have a nice feeling fabric or texture to them. Next to that is a thumb throttle on the left side. Out of all the thumb throttles I've tried on bikes, that is my favorite one, and it's pretty reactive. Off the line, it engages right away. It is a slower acceleration. It's what I call a commuter acceleration, not very poppy off the line. And I think they designed it that way because they figured you'd be taking one of your kids on the back end. And when you do that, you don't want a fast takeoff, because you might leave your kid back there somewhere. Next to the throttle, you have a nice control pad, up, down to change the pedal assist levels, an I button to scroll through different readouts on the screen. And then moving on to the right side of the handlebars, you got a 7-speed micro shift shifter, and that is my favorite shifter for an e-bike. It is just clean, crisp, and fast. The last thing as far as the cockpit are the nice feeling hydraulic brake levers. Brakes are just fantastic, nice and smooth, powerful, motor cutoff. Right side controls the rear, left side the front. No complaints with the brakes, they did a very nice job in that area. The last thing as far as the cockpit are the BMX style handlebars. You can adjust them, you can push them forward or bring them back, depending on how wide you want the cockpit area. I'm a 5'11" guy, and when I had the saddle extended up to where I could fully stretch my leg out, set it to my height, I was reaching way down to grab those grips. I think Velotric designed the Go for more of a smaller rider. You have a lightweight frame, kind of smaller tires, and then just those lower handlebars. So again, for me, I did have to lean over a little bit more than I like to for a commuter style bike. Now moving back to the saddle, it's actually very large, and I liked how comfortable it was. It's got a bunch of cushion, there's shocks underneath. I just liked how much surface area there was. For a commuter bike, you gotta have a large saddle. Well, moving up to the frame, there is a built-in 48-volt, 14.4 amp-hour battery. It's in the top of the frame, which is nice if you're the type of person that wants to take it out of the frame and charge it on the go, or charge it in your house, leave the bike in the garage. Personally, I like the battery to be underneath. I just don't like to see it. The bike just looks more clean that way. Now, after it was fully charged, I took this on a range test. My average speed was about 20 to 21 miles per hour, and my app recorded 22.9 miles with 1,273 feet of elevation gain. So that's a pretty good range for that elevation gain. Well, moving up towards the front of the bike, you have some front fork suspension. You can lock that out and adjust it. There's a bunch of construction in my city, and I took this down the most heinous road, going about 20 miles per hour, and it was actually handling that terrain really well. So I like that front fork suspension. I thought it was pretty good. Now, underneath the suspension, you have some nicer feeling plastic fenders. And then below that, you have street, commuter tires. My favorite thing about that was how quiet and just how smooth the ride was. Moving back to the rear of the bike, you have a 500 watt nominal, 900 watt peak motor that produces a top speed rating of 25 miles per hour. Now, I wasn't able to hit that. I'm a 190-pound rider, and when I did the speed test, there was a massive headwind. So with pedal assist, I can only top out at 21 miles per hour. With the throttle, it was a little bit faster at 22. And when I turned around and went with the wind, that's when I was hitting 24 to 25 miles per hour. Out of the box, it will only hit about 17, 18 miles per hour. I knew it could go faster, so I called up customer service and asked them how to unlock it, and they told me. So I'll just tell you now to save you that step. Once the bike's off, hit and hold the power and the plus button for 20 seconds until the bike comes back on. When it does, it'll just show the speed. I think they said it's around 23 kilometers per hour. So just use a plus button to tick that thing all the way to the top. Once you got it set to the highest level or whatever level you want, just hit the power button again, and there you go. So as I'm talking about power, I want to talk about hill climbing ability. Decided to take this up a 26% grade. I hit that hill with momentum. The power or the speed quickly died as I was getting to the trickiest parts, to the point where I did have to eventually help it. The bike was doing about 75–80%, but I was eventually able to get to the top. Further up that path, there was a 12% grade, and I decided to see the bike could just make that up on its own, which it did. It was slow. I think it dipped down to about 4 or 5 miles per hour, but it eventually made it. I will say that this is not the best bike for hills. During the range test, I took it up the canyon with about a 6 to 7% slope throughout the entire 2.5–3 mile stretch, and the bike was quite slow. So overall, not the best for hill climbing. It's not the fastest, but again, when you look at what this bike actually is, what they designed it to be, and that is just a 2-person friendly commuter, you're not going to be taking your kid up a 26% grade hill unless you're crazy. A few more things I want to talk about are the nicer pedals. They're lightweight. I always like to see lightweight pedals. A lot of bikes just have these super heavy and gnarly and steel or metal pedals. And then the last thing that I liked, which I typically don't like with bikes, is the dual kickstand. It's more of a pain to put it down because you have to lift up on the bike, but with it being so light, it actually wasn't that bad. And then to put it back up, you just push the bike forward and it just snaps back into place. The biggest reason why they went this route is because it makes the bike more stable when you're not on it. So if your kid pops up, just wants to sit on the saddle, it's not gonna tip over on them. The last thing I wanna talk about is the Apple Find My capability. The bike's got Bluetooth, so you can connect it to your phone, and if anybody ever takes it, you can just look in your app and go pay them a friendly visit. Overall, my favorite features are the accessories. I love this back here. That's just pretty awesome. So if you're looking for a bike to take your little ones on a ride, I would definitely consider this. As always, thanks for watching and take care. All right, I've been corrected by the missus here on how to properly use this kickstand. So how do you do it? You just stand. Oh, that is much easier. Okay, I feel like dumb that I didn't think to do that. So thank you.
You're welcome.
That's why I keep you around.
Oh, good.